We have an excellent program. I want to welcome everyone to the June 2026 Regional Housing Forum. I was here at the last forum. I apologize, my voice is as good as it is, but I hope everybody can understand me. We usually start with announcements. Let me see if there's any in the group. No announcements? Everybody's taking the summer off? Natalie?
Good morning, everyone. Natalie Kaiser, House ATL. For those of you who don't know, we're a membership coalition working on housing affordability. Welcome any of you to join if you're not already members. Our next member convening will be August 27th. We'll be at the Riverside Epicenter in Cobb County with a focus on energy efficiency and sustainability, as well as some of the initiatives that are happening in Cobb County. And immediately following that, we're going to do a candidate forum for the Public Service Commission. So would welcome you to participate in that also. We are planning our homeownership working group is planning a home expo on October 3rd in Clayton County. And we're currently accepting vendors and sponsors for that on our website. And our policy working group is going to start planning for the next state legislative session. So we would encourage you to get engaged in our policy working group meetings as we prepare for 2027. Lots of other things going on. Please have a look at our event calendar.
Thanks, Natalie.
Good morning, everyone. I am Barbara Guillory, Affordable Housing. We are doing Clayton County Affordable Housing Summit, June the 27th from 10 to 2. And we do have Clayton County Commissioner, Dr. Alika Anderson as our host and keynote speaker. And we certainly invite all of you to come out and be part of Clayton County Affordable Housing Summit. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Liv. That's my good friend, Liv. Y'all, it's going to be at Clayton State University. So what we're looking at, again, is how do we get the future workforce that's in the colleges to start talking and looking at becoming homeowners and building generational wealth.
So Barbara, you don't know it yet, but you're starting a housing forum in Clayton County.
Like you.
Okay. Yeah. Who else?
Hi, Bruce Gunter, real quick. Caitlin McCullough is here. I want to introduce her. She's new to the housing. Where's Caitlin? Now, if you followed the Jimmy Carter Work Project, the 40th annual a few weeks ago, and you've always wondered why housing takes so long to be built, Caitlin has ran the project and they built 24 houses in 5 days. It was really quite incredible. Thank you. That's very appropriate.
I think there's one more, George.
Hello, Maria Supporta, Two Hats, Supporta Report, and Atlanta Way 2.0. I just wanted to make sure y'all put on your schedule, October 1, we're going to have our second annual Atlanta Way Day. And we are focusing on economic mobility, and we really look for it to be a great event. It'll be in the morning. We say it's a day, but it's a half day, really, from like 8:30 to 12 or 12:30. And we will be at the Tower Theater again. They're going to have us go. So put that on your schedule. We look forward to seeing you.
Thanks, Maria. I hope everybody will attend.
Really fast. Hi, Sarah Haas. I want to just make sure everyone knows about the Atlanta Women's Affordable Housing Network also. So we are a kind of membership group focused on elevating women in the affordable housing industry. We put on quarterly luncheons, quarterly social events, service events, and other networking and support opportunities. So we've got events coming up in August. We'll have a little break for the summer. We have a luncheon and a fundraiser for the Trans Housing Coalition. Membership is free, so we'd welcome everyone to join, and men are welcome to join too.
All right. Okay.
posted or a calendar or? So all these things that people announce are on the
Good question, Ernie. The last announcements I wanted to make, and you may read about it in the paper today, is the Atlanta Civic Circle is going to stop publishing starting yesterday. What that means for us is that Sean Keenan, who is their housing reporter, is out of a job. We're trying to find another place for him to land, but as you may know, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution let their housing reporter go. Sean, who's probably the most knowledgeable person about affordable housing in the city and region, we're losing him. So we kept Atlanta Civic Circle going, covering affordable housing and democracy, I think the two big subjects in our community, for 4 years. But like so many of independent, journalism initiatives like this, we just couldn't sustain it. So if you get a chance to thank any of the board members or Sean or Sabalong out in the community, please do. They did a yeoman's job. Okay. Today, or let me just say this year, we've been covering barriers to producing affordable housing. You remember we had a great forum about barriers in zoning and permitting and how you got to build your driveway and where we can build and can't build. Today, we're focusing on really the foundation of all this work is capital, the money that comes forth to produce housing. So you're going to hear today, we've had some fabulous years in recent years and a lot of money on the table coming. You're going to hear from Frank and A&DP and others. But that money has spent out. So the question today is, where will those new investments come? So we're going to hear a lot about the successes, the challenges, and how collaboratively we've worked together to produce housing. I also want to mention Mayor Andrew Dickens in the city of Atlanta deserves credit for moving significant housing resources into the marketplace. Philanthropic partners like the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta has stepped up. Nonprofit organizations like A&DP, again, we're going to hear from, dramatically expanded their capacity. Private developers took on difficult projects. I know we have some of those developers in the room today. Community quarterbacks such as Westside Future Fund, John Hammond, done a great job on the West Side, and CDFIs and lenders provided capital financing. None of this happened in isolation. And I'd also say the mayor also became the chair of the Atlanta Regional Commission. And I think he challenged the commission to step up, which they have. So I don't know if any of you were able to go to their summit about 3 weeks ago up in Duluth, but it really was an indication of how ARC is taking a major role. And I think the mayor did a good job getting that going. Our goal this morning is to understand the impact of these initiatives have had and what lessons have been learned and how the region thinks about recapitalization and sustaining momentum going forward. That's what we hope to leave with today, a better understanding. So we have Frank Fernandez, the Community Foundation, who's going to step up first. Frank, you ready? people so well, but Frank is one of the top 20 community foundations in the country. He's instrumental. Somebody had to be the container for the investments. And Frank and Sarah Kirsch really pushed that through. For that, he was with the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, made a major investment in starting House ATL. So Frank, you got the mic. Thank you.
Yep. How about I like walking. Can I do that? And then or you want me to examine? So, good morning, everyone. So, as I was thinking about just kind of setting the stage today, it's focused on capital barriers, right? And we're going to get into that and deals and investments in projects and such. But I wanted to take a step back first just to give you a sense of how we approach it and then kind of zoom in on that and kind of the work we've tried to do there, because hopefully it will be informative in terms of the role of capital and kind of what are we doing more broadly to impact the affordable housing sector or ecosystem. So at a very high level, we as a foundation and the work we're trying to do in areas that we're really focused on, like housing, is think about what can we do at a systems level, at a regional level, to really move the needle on affordable housing. So there's three things we try to do, right, within a system, especially within housing over the last 5 years or so. First is, how do we make it more equitable? Right, we'll talk a little bit about that. Second, how do we make it more robust? How do we bring more resources to the sector? And third, how do we make it more effective, more strategic, right? How do we reduce the friction in the system? And so for us, this is not something that happened overnight. It's, as Bruce said, and the mayor often says, this is a group project. So there were a lot of folks who contributed to it, and some of it started before my time at the Community Foundation, and then coming to the Community Foundation and engaging with Sarah, who many of you know, as well as many of you in the room, over a period of time. But a few different things happened over the last 8 years, at least from where I sit and where the Community Foundation sits, that have affected our ability to really start marshaling resources in partnership with many others for affordable housing, right? So one of the key things is the start of House ATL. Even though House ATL is not a capital focused entity, it really did, at a city level, start to bring together all the key actors to start thinking about what's a shared strategy and approach from a policy and funding perspective to really move the needle on housing in the city. And now, as Natalie can speak to, as it starts to think more regionally. But that was one key event. Another key event for us as a foundation, this predates me, was we were one of the first foundations that got engaged in impact investing in the Southeast. It's not something, it's a lot of other places and other parts of the country is very prevalent, but here not as much. So we started the first place-based impact fund back in 2018 that had a not exclusive focus on housing, but a primary focus on housing. And since then, we've managed now about 4 different funds, impact funds mostly, and focused on housing. And so I share all that because I think it's important to understand that, and Bruce alluded to this as well, that these things don't happen by accident. They happen as a function of relationships and building not just a fund infrastructure, but a relational infrastructure in a community and an ecosystem to really move the needle and really be able to aggregate more capital for the priorities that we all collectively have and share. So for us, this is all about partners, especially being able as a foundation and as a community foundation in particular. We are a aggregator and allocator of philanthropic and impact capital at a very high level, right? So you have to have good partners who can help you with that. So here are some of our partners who've contributed and partnered with us. This is a little stale, so we have more folks, and we have a lot of individual investors as well. But it's important to really recognize that you have to have the philanthropic sector, you have to have the banking sector, you have to have individuals, and increasingly more and more corporations engaged, and I'm going to talk about that at the end, to really be able to not only aggregate a lot of capital, but create a system that replenishes itself over a period of time, right? So for us, these are our three pillars of what we're focused on. It seems it's relatively straightforward: policy, programs, and production. We're going to talk mostly about production, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention these other pieces, because our approach is a systems approach in terms of how are we affecting the system. And some of that is, a lot of that is about policy, right? And how we support groups like House ATL and others to affect policy. Also, how do we support different programs to really make them more efficient, right? We partner with the city. I have my colleague, Kayla Hammond, who focuses and leads those two programs. And how do we leverage our dollars to support innovative programming? How do we leverage our dollar to address the racial gap we know exists in home ownership, right? And be very intentional around that, whether through Worth or other programs. And then production, which is where 90+% of our dollars at least have been focused. And so we made a decision as a function of our strategic plan to bring together a lot of capital. We made a $200 million commitment, right? At a high level, we said, okay, we're going to raise $100 million of philanthropic dollars and $100 million of philanthropic capital to really try to move the needle on affordable housing in our region, right? So we have a deep partnership with the city of Atlanta, but it's not exclusively at the city. It really is at a regional level. And we've defined region for purposes of this first phase as really the 5-county region, right? We know there's different ways to draw it, but in terms of our first go, we thought it made sense to focus on the 5 counties. And so here we define kind of what we focus on from those two pools of capital. We have an investment thesis, and then there's reality, which we'll talk about when we do the panel. But the philanthropic capital, as you can imagine, was really focused on nonprofit partnerships with joint ventures. Really, for us, our key things were, what are an emphasis on deeper affordability, longer-term affordability, and how do we support more vulnerable populations, defined in different ways. And then on the impact capital, that also can go towards some of those kind of projects if they need it, but also how do we work with for-profit developers who are building and operating and preserving affordable housing. May not be as deeper, but is really important, because at a macro level, we all know the biggest challenge is supply, and how are we helping with supply. So for us, it's interesting. This was not what we thought would happen. It was much easier to raise philanthropic capital than impact capital. Now I understand why it is, but at the time we thought it'd be harder. But no, we've been able to raise these. We've already exceeded our goal. A lot of great partners have invested significant resources here. And one of the interesting things from our philanthropic capital is, we thought we had two different pools. Oh, we'll do grants and we'll do loans. And what we found is that actually we have like 6 different products across both pools of capital that is trying to be responsive to both what the needs of the marketplace are, and also how do we really extend the useful life of all our dollars, right? So this is our philanthropic pool, and then there's an impact pools who are a little under 60 million, right? In terms of what we're raising, here we're managing at 3% returns, and we have been making investments from both pools, and this is kind of over the last several years. And these numbers include these 2 funds, and we also manage the Atlanta Affordable Housing Fund as well, and so. There's a lot of investment over the last couple of years. Really about 55 projects across the 3 funds that we manage. It has been investments in nonprofits, joint ventures, for-profits. About 65% of it has been in the city of Atlanta, because we have a great partner that we work with in the city of Atlanta, but also increasingly trying to make investments in other parts of the region: Clayton County, Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, Cobb. I think we now have investments in all 5 of the counties. And a good mix of home ownership and rental, kind of what you would think. About 80% is focused on rental, 20% on home ownership. And it's about a 10-to-1 leverage. We try to make this but-for capital. So it's about over $1 billion in projects that we've invested in over the last couple of years. And I think to me, one of the key things as to why we've been able to deploy this capital as fast as we have is because we have a really good partner. Because our money by itself is not going to fill all the gaps. We know that. We need other partners at the table. We need good private conventional lending partners, and we need good public sector partners. And for us, one of the things we like to tout, because it's one of the things we want to do more and more with other jurisdictions across the region, is how do we partner with the public sector? We've partnered very closely with the city in terms of investing in projects together. We have, I should know this one off the top of my head, maybe you do, how many projects we've invested in together. I'm going to find that stat out and I'll have it. But it's a lot of projects. And it's really created a lot of momentum because we've been able to support over, just with our funds, by the end of this year, probably be about 7,000 units. And most of that here in the city of Atlanta. And that has helped and mutually helped in terms of the cities, I think, at like almost 12,000 units at this point. But who's counting?
She's got that number.
Yes. And it's a great partnership. And I think partnership is critical as we talk about what's next in being able to move the ball forward. And I don't even want to care about that. So here, I want to just lift up a few things that I think is important for what we've been trying to do with our funds. One of the things that was important to us is how do we help support nonprofits and help them get to scale and invest in them in different ways, as well as how do we help emerging developers, right? So that's the new term we have to use, but we really have an emphasis how we help Black developers, Latino developers who are for-profit and help them get to scale as well. And thinking of different types of capital that they need to be able to grow, right? Because some of it is, we can provide a loan or a grant or forgivables a loan for a project, but what are other ways we can help support the developer separate from at a project level to help them be able to scale? And think about the different ways to do that. So here's where I want to, I'm going to end with these two slides here, because we're going to talk a lot more. And when I did that partnership slide, the sector we didn't see enough of, we're slowly getting there, is corporations. And being able to make the case for the corporate community to engage and invest in ways that pretty much all the other sectors have. And so part of it for us is how do you frame it for them, not why you do it, but why would they do it? Right? And this is one of my favorite cheeky lines, is housing is where a job goes to sleep at night. That's a little cold, but for people who are employers, that's a way to get them to think about how does it affect their bottom line. Because we know it affects their bottom line. We know now that housing is one of the biggest determinants of our regional growth, or lack thereof, or slowing of it. And so we really need to pay attention to it if we want to continue to be economically vibrant, and you're a company, especially a larger company, you have to be thinking about housing and making sure we're framing it. And the good thing is that across the country we have models where other corporations are stepping up. So a few of us, was it last year? Yeah, we went to DC and we got to sit in with the Amazon folks because they have one of their headquarters in the DC area, and they were talking about their housing fund. And they have they've invested $3.6 billion, just one company, in 3 of their footprints. And then so our pitch to our local community is like, okay, you don't need to do $3.6 billion, but how about $10 million? And so we're slowly now working closely with the mayor, with Atlanta Community for Progress to get in front of and hopefully get some commitments from them, because as is the theme here today, is we are running out of capital. We're not fully done, but we're getting close. We've deployed a lot of money because there's a lot of need and a lot of great projects. So yeah, so this is the pitch to them, and we're starting to do that right. We're in the midst of doing that right now. So.
Thank you, Frank. It's we've never had a $200 million fund. Why do you think people invested in the community foundation to do this work?
I think it was a few things, right? So again, it's the kind of the stars aligning. One, and this is, I think, in some ways was most critical, there was enough political and community will and enough leadership and champions for it to really be able to say, housing is now a top 3 or top 2 issue for our community. You know, having obviously the mayor at the time when we launched House ATL say that $1 billion commitment to affordable housing, I think was an example of that, and clearly our current mayor has really elevated that to the nth degree. So I think political and community will is one. Another is that you have to have a vehicle for investment that funders trust. I think that's a historic role that the Community Foundation has played. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year. We manage about $1.8 billion in assets. So foundations and funders see us as a trusted partner. And we were highly engaged in supporting House ATL and others. So they saw us as a key and a trusted actor within the housing space. So to me, those are some of the things.
You know, I didn't tell Frank I was going to ask that question, but I was fishing for the right answer.
Oh.
And it
I
is,
gave it.
it did, because the community trusts the Community Foundation. And I think that, you talked about it earlier, it's because we were really all at the table. The city was, the housing developers was, House ATL and your whole network. We were all at the table. That builds trust, that we're not competitive, that we're going to work together. So thank you, Frank.
Yep. I think I'm passing the baton to John.
Yeah. So, come on up, John. No. Take it with you. So let me just, I think we all know each other, but I want to just take a minute. John is born in Atlanta, raised in Atlanta, has served Atlanta really his whole life. He was a Fulton County Commissioner, Atlanta City Council member, and he survived. He's a Director of Intergovernment Affairs for Maynard Jackson way back when, worked with Fannie Mae for 11 years. So John has really devoted his whole life and career to this work. He's going to talk about what we've done recent years at ANDP. Thank you, John.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Before I get into ANDP, first, we're honored. We're like a group of 15, 16 people. We aren't the City of Atlanta. We aren't the Community Foundation. But there's amazing things happening. It's just not these three groups. We've got the best place-based organizations in the country. We've got a growing not-for-profit sector. They're great CDFIs. They're developers. What has happened in Atlanta, unfortunately, maybe more the city, because we're going to talk more, others are stepping up, in the last 4 years is unprecedented anywhere in the country. And part of it is we all work together, we all cooperate together, and we take risk, right? When you started that big fund, you didn't know whether you could raise it. And when the predecessor mayor, and now the current mayor got the dollars out, had a big number, you didn't know we could do it. So ANDP sort of learned by that, and we'll talk. We went aspirational. And if you go aspirational, sometimes you actually make and exceed your goals. So for us, we had been a good not-for-profit, one of many in the Atlanta area, and we had grown over time, but we said, look, we need to step up and double. And we're like, how long will that take? 5 years, 6, let's go with 5.5 years. And to double for us, for those where we are technically the developer. When we're the developer, we're investing in somebody else and we may fund it and it's a risk sharing. But 2,000 of those, and sometimes we're the junior developer and sometimes it's all our money. And we wanted to grow our loan fund, which is a CDFI that now Sarah leads, from 9 to 18 million. And we were intentional because this whole sector really had been low-income housing tax credit developers, which were bigger firms, right? To grow the system, you needed smaller firms who were local-based, who didn't have access to capital. And Frank's right. In Atlanta, that's a high percentage. Those are black and brown-owned or women-owned firms that had been left out, right? But aside from race, that's the strategy. You go local, you build that system. And we've sort of done that together. So we had a goal of 50 million there. Let me go and give a little bit of our model, because we all feel unique pieces, right? And so for us, our geography is, of course, the city of Atlanta. We were born here, went to the region. We do a little bit of lending statewide, and we've developed a relationship with the Department of Community Affairs, and that is good for the state and is good for Metro Atlanta. We try to fill market needs others don't. Most subsidy, most capital is lined up for multifamily. The majority of our units were multifamily, but we really focus on the single family and the home ownership because that's a space that needs to be done. We're small, so we had to learn how to really steward the dollars. And so we're proud that we leveraged our capital campaign dollars. We didn't raise $200 million, right? We leveraged them 25 to 1. And we're sort of nerdy. So there are dollars in the Treasury Department that don't go to the city of Atlanta. They aren't apportioned out. You have to have a nerdy application, and therefore business development, some of them are for housing, but we brought those predominantly to our homeownership work. So for every local charitable dollar we got a dollar from the federal government that would have gone somewhere else. So we're proud of that. Enterprise level capital instead of borrowing debt is part of our model because we get that capital out at 0% or 1 or 2 or 3%. And then, like the community foundation, you're flexible in the city, right? If this neighborhood needs it, you can move it over here, or if multifamily works, we can move the money back and forth. And I'll hit again, all our work is through partnership. We've got the small staff. Our loan fund back office is the reinvestment fund, a big, great national CDFI. When we develop a single family home, we fund it, but small builders and realtors work on it and do risk sharing with us. And that's sort of key to our model so we can keep our staff. The ecosystem, just to emphasize, I won't go through all the partners, but it's complex. There are a lot of us at the table. And Atlanta is unique because we all respect and work with one another, and that does not happen everywhere. Our geography, you can sort of see where we are, predominantly a lot in Atlanta, a lot in the 5 core, but some outside in the larger ARC area. Frank, you had a quote at the ARC that I just loved. Right, a lot of the money is going to Atlanta because you've got a great partner with funding. But as we talk next, as other local governments step in, right, our dollars or your dollars alone or the municipal don't do it, we need to put them together. Building support for this, this is sort of our nerd chart. I love the nerd chart. So the charitable dollars drive everything else. If you're in a business, it's equity. That's what you start with. So going and raising that and, right, Amanda, the city's got a growing tax base, and it comes from that. Frank, y'all have got relationships with folks we don't, that you raise from. We're really good with CRA-motivated banks and some other donors, so we all do it in our space. And we had a capital campaign, but with a big extra gift from Truist that really wasn't in the capital campaign, but we used, so we raised about $25 million, which for us was really, really big. We had not done a capital campaign really in the 20 years I'd been here. When we started before the Olympics, we had done a big one. And then we doubled that with the nerdy Treasury Department dollars, some of which that are flowing now, some of which aren't flowing now as we look into the future. And then ANDP not only has its loan fund, but we developed a fund like a loan fund so we don't have to get a construction loan for our single family homes. And that money's pretty cool, right? You invested in an apartment, you may need to invest for 15 years. You invest in a single family home, you can rotate it 1 year later and rotate it the year after that. So we did a lot of rotation. So our investment number is $227 million we invested, right? Frank did it in a couple, 2.5 years. That was 5.5 years for us, but $227 million. And the total number of units from our development and our lending is 4,700. So when we lend, we may lend like others, you know, it may be 30, 40, 50,000, but we do our single family homes, it's all our money, it's 100%. So our investment per unit is bigger, and that was $1.1 billion. The donors, we all need to thank the donors. We had new donors, existing donors stepped up because we were aspirational, and raising that $20 million to start, and then the additional 5, it would not have happened without it. Again, a summary of our results, just sort of hit this, but what I wanted to add is the 3.5 times. Our goal was to double, but we were aspirational and went up 3.5 times. Underfinanced developers, sort of the next results I wanted to hit, we ended up with 85 million in underfinanced developers. Before, we were a moderate-sized not-for-profit that had a very small CDFI, and now we really see us as an aggregator of capital through the CDFI or other ways that we can get the dollars out. And one thing on the home ownership pitch I wanted to mention, great housing, it's affordable, majority below 80% AMI, but in Atlanta, values are going up. So our average homeowner that's been in a home at least 5 years, we've only been sort of doing this at scale for 11 or 12, $190,000 of wealth creation from the appreciation, down payment forgiveness, paying down their mortgage. Group project for the mayor, and I wanted to quickly say, we couldn't have done this work without the community foundation in the city. We are 21% of the city's production. He's a higher percent of ours because of the down payment assistance. 26% of Frank's. Frank's a higher percentage of ours because you're in that single family fund. Part of your money's in every home we do. It is a team effort. So the road ahead that we're going to get to, Bill, is we are going to recapitalize. We're figuring out what's the amount and what's the term, but we don't want to step back. This is not a grow 3.5 times, right? We'll talk about the federal and other, but we have to stay with the emerging developers that we all, just not the 3 of us, everybody in the room and other not-for-profits, we developed the system that grew, and if we pull the money away, if we don't recapitalize quickly, that system will go away. It went away with the foreclosure crisis, and it took us a hell of a long time to get it back together. So we all, in these more difficult times, have to figure out how to recapitalize and keep this work going at scale. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, John. Let me add, I got a question. Just quickly, we're trying to stay on time. Everybody in the room wants to know, do you just go to AI and say, where's the money? I mean, how does that work? I mean, he said he was just nerdy and he found money over at Treasury. Could you tell us the secret? Everybody here needs to raise some money.
So we're doing our next, like, nerdy 25-page plan. So we may run some stuff through AI. We did not have that this time. I think in this town, if you've done something smaller but have delivered on your results, and you go to them and say, hey, we'd like to do something bigger, and it might not be 10 times more, folks will invest. And the other thing that's changed is the housing is better understood. And Frank, it's many of your private sector folks. We've all been meeting, the governmental, the not-for-profit, the community members got it. But there were a bunch of private developers who were very successful not doing affordable housing that got into this sector. And that awareness, that is a unique Atlanta.
John,
it's hard, but we do it.
We got a panel for you to go on and on. Amanda Ryan, who we all know, but let me just say, Amanda's actually doing double duty today. She was over at ULI, gave a speech the mayor was supposed to give. She got over there, jumped in an Uber and came here today. Amanda, deeply appreciate that. She's the Chief Housing Officer for the City of Atlanta, leading the mayor's housing team in advancing a city of opportunity for all. She's got decades of experience, most recently executive director of the Atlanta Institute, and did phenomenal work there. I could go on and on. Thank you for being here, Amanda.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here with you today. I wanted to start by introducing you to the team that we have at the City of Atlanta. Because although I worked closely with the city when I was at the Atlanta Land Trust, it was not always clear to me who was doing what and where they sat within the city. So this is the housing team. It's 11 people now. We're about to hire an 11th person, and we sit within the mayor's office. So that's kind of what gives us special power at the city, is that we are directly tied to his priorities, and we really work at his discretion. So you can see me up at the top. I'm Chief Housing Officer. I report to the Chief of Staff, which is Courtney English. And then we have an incredibly talented, smart, passionate, hardworking team that are working on a variety of housing initiatives, including policy, identifying new funding sources, advancing the development of land that is in public ownership. We also have folks on our team that are working on homelessness and housing insecurity. And so it's incredibly collaborative, and we're all working together to advance the mayor's very ambitious housing agenda, which at this point, you all know, is to create or preserve 20,000 units of housing by 2030. So as Frank mentioned, we're at a little over 13,600. So we're really actually tracking slightly ahead of where we should be at this point in time. But my charge is most definitely to accelerate all of the work. So we're really trying to move forward as quickly as possible with things that we have control over, which is all of the land that's in public ownership, creating new funding sources to support private development activity, and trying to make sure that private developers also have a clear path to building within the city. So working to address the permitting process. We're working on zoning 2.0 right now, among other things. And I wanted to just pause a moment here and acknowledge some of the accomplishments that we've seen over the past 4 years. So there has been an incredible amount of groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings. Many of you have probably been at those events. On the top right of the screen, we also recently held a Senior Wills event. So this is an event designed to support seniors who don't have an estate plan. So we bring them in a room. We bring a bunch of attorneys in the room. Jason Carter was here just 2 weeks ago at this event to write wills for these seniors in one day. So they leave the event having an estate plan in hand. We also recently held our second Housing Expo. The Housing Expo is an event that is designed to support public employees in creating a path to homeownership. Many of you were also in the room for that event. And we also celebrated the 500th unit completion within our Rapid Housing Initiative, which is creating permanent supportive housing in the city of Atlanta. So lots of accomplishments over the past 4 years, but we still have a lot to do to get to our overarching goal. So much of that work was really made possible through the housing opportunity bonds. Between 2021 and 2023, 150 million of these bonds were issued. And of that, about 120 million were used to fund 56 projects. So this is critical gap funding that is typically structured as a loan, but the way that the program works, these loan tenures are 15 to 30 years, and they either burn off or are forgiven. So they're at the bottom of the capital stack and often don't get repaid. So it kind of ends up looking like equity within a deal. So this was critical funding, even if we had development partners that were getting money from the Community Foundation. or other public sources, there typically is still a gap that needs to be funded. So having this flexible source to fill that gap was really important. And with the recent changes in the low-income housing tax credit program, we're seeing that although more projects are getting funded, the gap is bigger for each individual project. We just met with a developer last week whose gap is $9.5 million. So having a public source like this is incredibly important. And this is done. We're out of money. We're out of money. The Community Foundation's out of money. Everybody's out of money. And so we have had a lot of successful programs in the past, but we really need to look forward to figure out what is needed in the future to continue to build on the momentum we have. So that, in part for us at the city, is the Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative. Hopefully you have heard about this. Oftentimes, this is, people understand this as the TAD extensions. The TAD extensions will enable implementation of the Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative, but they are separate things. So the Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative is essentially an acknowledgement of the inequity that we have here in Atlanta. We know that we have the worst economic mobility of the 50 largest cities across the country. If you're a child born in poverty in Atlanta, you only have a 4% chance of making it to be upper middle income. So we have to address these issues at the city, and the NRI is really the generational opportunity to respond to these inequities with a coordinated, measurable, and lasting transformation. The NRI is focused on a handful of neighborhoods across Atlanta's south and west side. If you go to atlneighborhoods.org, you can see a map that indicates where all of those neighborhoods are located. But they essentially run along a handful of commercial corridors in the city. So the Hallowell corridor, the Campbellton corridor, downtown Atlanta and the surrounding neighborhoods, and then in southwest Atlanta, it's Thomasville Heights. So the goal here is really to harness all of the resources that we have at the city in order to invest in these neighborhoods in a holistic way, including mixed income housing, green space, healthy, safe environments, reliable transit and public transportation, quality education, and I can't read the last one. My eyesight is so bad. Commercial and economic development. Great, thank you. That's okay. And so in order to do this work, we are really trying to align all of our resources at City Hall, including all of our affordable housing work around these neighborhoods. This map does not look like it looks on my page. It's very difficult to read, but essentially what you see listed here are the 58 projects that we have underway right now on publicly owned land. We are really trying to prioritize projects that are located within these NRI neighborhoods. So that is an effort that is largely executed through our Housing Strike Force, which you all are probably also familiar with. That is a body of all of the public agencies across the city of Atlanta that have land that is in public ownership that can be developed for affordable housing. So we're working with all of our partners to make sure that we are prioritizing and advancing projects on their land within these communities. So looking forward, we have identified our funding need over the next 4 years to exceed $350 million. That includes about $210 million for those public land projects that I just mentioned that are currently in our pipeline. Another $28.5 million is needed to close the gap on 2025 4% tax credit awarded projects. So that's just 1 year of tax credit awarded projects. So again, at minimum $350 million, because every year that list is going to grow. $25 million is needed for strategic land acquisition to assemble larger, more efficient parcels within these NRI neighborhoods. We estimate over $50 million will be needed to preserve and stabilize 100 units of existing naturally occurring affordable housing. This is a bit of a shift in strategy given how little time we have left under Mayor Dickens. We really want to try and prioritize preservation because it is a much more efficient execution, and we just want to make sure we're not losing what we already have. And then we need additional funding to support our Housing Help Center, to support our rapid housing initiatives, as well as the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation's Housing Production Fund. So the need is significant. And one of the ways that we anticipate meeting that need is certainly through the TAD extension, which I mentioned earlier. This year, the TADs are expected to generate $184 million in usable investment in the TAD geographies. What's currently proposed is the extension of 6 of the 8 tax allocation districts in the city of Atlanta, and that will allow for us to have a consistent funding source to support these projects over the next 30 years. But TAD alone is not enough because TAD funding can only be spent within those designated areas. So we need another funding source that can be coupled with TAD to support activity outside of the tax allocation districts. And at this point, what we are anticipating is that that will be a commercial SSD or special services district. There are a handful of SSDs already in Atlanta. This is an additional property tax that will be levied on commercial properties across the city of Atlanta. This is expected to generate about $25 million a year. So again, we'll fund activity within the NRI outside of tax allocation districts. I'm hopeful that some of this will be used for affordable housing, but we're also in conversation around other sources that can be used for affordable housing. And that's being done through the Housing Strike Force's JAKE, the Joint Investment Committee. We're going through a comprehensive exercise right now to survey the landscape and identify all of the different sources of funding that could be used to support affordable housing. We've identified 50 different options and are trying to understand, of those 50, what can we advance here in Atlanta. So the SSD is part of that, but we're also evaluating other tools that can be used in conjunction with the SSD to support affordable housing. So we're in the middle of that exercise right now. In addition, Jake is going to be working on ensuring that we're using every tool in our toolbox in the most effective way, bringing these to the capital markets strategically and impactfully. So again, just making sure that every single agency is aligned with how we're using our tools and that we don't have conflicts between guidelines for tools that are often layered together on a project. We're seeing that a lot right now. And then we'll also be adapting policies for funding tools to meet shifting priorities, cover unaddressed gaps, and respond to fluctuating market conditions. So really that is our responsibility at the city, to coordinate everything that's happening among our public sector partners and ensure that the limited resources that we have are being leveraged in the best way possible in order to advance all of the projects that are proposed and planned across the city to achieve our 20,000 unit goal. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we do have an event coming up next week. It'll be the city's first Developer Day. This is an event that is designed to provide developers and anybody that touches the development process with technical assistance around how to navigate zoning, permitting, site development, the tree protection ordinance, financing, as well as a preview into upcoming opportunities that we will have at the city or in conjunction with our partners. So we'll be announcing a number of new solicitations that we'll be issuing over the next year. So the idea is to provide the development community with kind of a comprehensive understanding of what the future opportunities look like, so you all can plan your resources appropriately and assemble teams to respond to those solicitations that you think that you're the best fit for, understanding what is coming in the future, and that today there may be an RFP on the street that you're interested in, but in 3 months there's actually another one that is a better fit for you. So you should not invest your time and resources in responding to the RFP just because it's the opportunity that's directly in front of you today. But rather be more strategic and wait until this other opportunity comes out in the next 3 months. Coming from the Atlanta Land Trust, I know that was a challenge, trying to anticipate and plan for all of those opportunities that were coming down the line. without line of sight into what they were specifically. So we're hoping to help address that through this event. So please register. It is a half-day event that will be held at Mays High School. We would love to have you there. I think that's it. Yes.
Thank you, Amanda. You know I have a question.
Yeah.
So,
I'm ready.
you've worked in so many important roles, different ways of going at the work. And I can just imagine that sometimes you would go, God, I wish the city would do that.
Yeah.
Don't they get that? Well, now you are the city.
Right. Right. So I can't complain anymore.
Well, no, it's not that. But it really is, I think for all of us, how has the view changed? Mm-hmm. We all look from where we are and what we need. And then when somebody's courageous enough to go into the political world, now they're sitting at a place where, damn, I wish the city would do so-and-so. Mm-hmm. Any low-hanging fruit for you? You thought, when I get there, I'm going to do that.
Yes, yeah. I certainly had a list of things that were incredibly difficult or made developing affordable housing difficult for us at the Land Trust that I wanted to address when I got to the city. And certainly when I got there, I developed an appreciation for how complex the city is and that not everything for us on the housing team is within our control. Yeah. So what that requires is we have to really work hard to collaborate with our partners across departments and earn their trust in order to solve problems. So permitting is a perfect example of that. Yeah. Permitting is still highly problematic at the city and creates a real barrier for the development of housing within the city. So there is a bigger picture permitting initiative going on that is not under our purview, but we recognize there is a need for a stopgap solution.
Sure.
And so we have this Welcome Home initiative, which is essentially internal permit expediting for affordable housing projects. It did exist, but we've introduced multiple system improvements and process improvements. So our hope is that it starts to work better for developers. But there are lots of examples of that where we've identified challenges or I experienced challenges and I'm trying to address them from my new seat in the city. I think a lot of it is also just communication. Yeah. It's a little bit of a
If I would take anything from what you just shared, it is maybe really clarifying this is what my department can do. Yeah. This is what we can't do.
Right.
So that we have the right expectations.
Right.
So Amanda's going to get right on that. You guys come up and we're going to have a panel. So as you may or may not know, it takes a lot of planning and a lot of communication to get everybody here and put a program on. We typically have a conversation, I will or George will, with every panelist to say, here's our goals of the panel, here's some questions you might expect. And I have a whole page of those here. But they also know I just make things up, right? So in the make things up category, let's think that I invited you all over to my back porch for some coffee and tea, and got some great cookies. And I've just named, beer. Yeah. I even know what kind of beer Frank wants. So. But we're here to talk about opportunities, obstacles. What worked, what didn't work. You touched on it, Amanda. Some of the challenges, didn't know we had till we got there. But let's just say we're sitting around with each other. I don't ask you 10 questions. Any questions of each other? Anybody want to share?
Yeah, ANDP is thinking, what is it going to do next? And our goal is, let's do about 5 years, and our goal is at least not do less. You know, there are federal things we're all aware of. We talked about that. So the question for them is, y'all framed housing opportunity fund is like, there's money out there, could be for housing. What should we be doing to get a timeline and advocate? And all of us got money out fast. You've got to finish yours. When? What is sort of the expectation for new dollars coming in? Because we don't know how many units we can touch until we have a sense of the environment and there are others. So I think that's the discussion, and we're all figuring it out. We might not have kind of.
Frank, you might want to have another beer before you answer that, but you guys have the money.
I think
Where's the money?
The biggest challenge is understanding the landscape of resources that exist, because none of us alone can do a project. It requires multiple different funding sources, and I have asked Frank when he's going to raise another fund for housing, because that was a critical resource, and it really enabled us at the Land Trust to move forward a lot of projects and pursue new opportunities with confidence, knowing that the financial resources would be there. But I've gotten the answer to the question, so I do understand that.
What'd you tell her, Frank?
So I would say for us, right, because as I kind of walk through, we're closing out the impact fund right now. And so we got to close that out successfully, because I think it is, all our funders and investors have been very happy with how it's gone so far. But I think being able to close it out successfully, fully deploy it, and it performs, is really critical to be able to raise the next fund. So I'm very focused on, in the near term, doing that. Really focused on, because I harass poor Amanda and other folks in the city to partner with us, because like for the corporation to come step up in the way we need them to, because all the other sectors have, they really need to hear from the mayor and the city, and that alignment is so critical, right? So that's where we're focused in the near term. Longer term, because I think if we are able to do that, we can get the different funders in their different roles to re-up for the next fund, right? Because we're going to deploy it, and then we have to do it again. And I'll tell you, we made a $200 million commitment. We have to like double that. And I have some ideas about how you double that, but it's going to be having to bring new players to our market, right? We have to bring national funders, national investors. We have to get pension funds, endowments to engage with us in a different way. And so for me, I'm proactively thinking about, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, we have 2 pools of capital, but we have like 6 different products from it, right? And one of the lessons learned is that for people who are not from the foundation world, at least, they're like, well, what's my return, and what does that look like on a risk-adjusted basis? And so basically, there's a fork in the road, an inflection point for the next fund that we're really actively thinking about is, well, you can raise more dollars if you increase the ROI expectation. But then is that new capital to the marketplace where they can borrow money at 8%?
Affordable.
Doesn't, right. Yeah. It's not missional from our perspective. So we have to figure out ways to partner with philanthropy and leverage our own balance sheet to bring down the risk. And so we're actively exploring, starting to think through structures that will enable us to bring down the risk so that a 3% return is on a risk-adjusted basis not that big a deal, so that we can bring new capital in addition to bringing philanthropic. And so we're actively exploring those.
John, you get any answers about where the money is?
Yeah. Our success was we all got the money out fast. Looking back, we might have paced it. I worry about this infrastructure, and I think we are positioned to go forward. There's some federal dollars we've got to figure out because that's been a part. So we will kick off something in January, and I hope it's at least as big. But I get y'all's tensions, and we as advocates need to continue to be at the tables as
John,
housing mayor.
You think you could help Frank raise some money?
So,
go in that little AI room, put it in.
I do. As we've got this infrastructure where folks aren't going and saying, well, they're bad, invest in us. I spend a lot of time nationally and other talking about what's going on in Atlanta. And there are CRA-motivated banks, right? It's not risk. We cover the risk. We're going to get them back. He's raising a different type of capital. So I am helping him raise the money, and he and his board has helped us raise our money. The mayor standing up with us has helped. So I think we all help one another. I just say all of us have to figure out what to do in this next 2 years to message to these developers. And some of them have projects they're still working on. So, right, we've got to, I don't want to send a panic, but I worry about that because it'll take us another
But one of
50
the,
years.
I think one of the assets is you can point to what we did with the last money, right? Then that builds trust. If you did that, can you do it again? And that's always the question. Can you go to scale and replicate?
Yeah, and I think the big thing we're all struggling with right now, relative to, say, just 3 years ago when we really started to deploy capital, is the federal headwinds are much stronger than I think anyone anticipated, and just costs keep going up.
Yeah.
Those two things have made it really hard. You got to recalibrate, all right, how are we going to make deals happen? Because we ended up, for example, we've ended up funding a lot more light tech projects than we anticipated because of just pricing going bananas. And then all these projects having gaps. So we didn't necessarily thought, well, we were going to have to do that. So then, like, we ended up deploying capital faster than we anticipated. And I think John's infrastructure point, the ecosystem for capital infrastructure point, is really, really important because I have the same concern. If we don't keep, even if it's not at the same pace, keep that infrastructure here, it can go away, or it definitely starts to atrophy.
How does the city help with that?
Well, I'll just add, costs have gone up 30% since 2022, so it is incredibly significant. And our money, the money that we had just doesn't go as far anymore. So the city we're really just trying to figure out what the next iteration is of housing opportunity bonds, because like I said, that was a really important resource to fill gaps in projects in the city of Atlanta, projects that were receiving tax credits, that were receiving TAD, that were receiving investments from CDFIs, projects that already had a number of sources lined up, but still had a gap that needed to be closed. And so fortunately, we have TADs today, and we hopefully will continue to have TADs that will continue to be a resource, but it is very limited in the geography that it can provide funding for. So we need other things, and it's looking like the SSD is going to be that other thing.
SSD.
Special Services District is going to be the new resource that we have to fund affordable housing and other economic development projects across the city. That's something that requires city council approval. So we still have.
So that was just released a few weeks ago.
That intention was just released as part of the Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative implementation plan. And we actually have spent a lot of time evaluating different options in order to arrive at that recommendation. But there's still a lot of work that has to be done to figure out how to size and scale it and underwrite it. So that work will happen over the summer, and then we'll have to go back to City Council for approval.
One add I'd like to make the optimism. Right now, it's Atlanta, right, that's funding. There's great stuff going on in DeKalb. We'd love to take some of our small developers.
We're going to
They
talk
are doing
about
a
that,
housing,
yeah.
right? So we need others to step up, and then the system can continue.
Let me open it up, take a few questions. I've got about 10 minutes. You're first. Got the mic? Stand up, tell me who you are.
Thurston Cook with One Street Residential. Quick question, or first off, kudos to each of your organizations for the success. And as you look ahead, it's interesting to me that we have three major organizations that have all sort of tapped out at the same time. I'm curious, as you look ahead, are you in dialogue with each other about maybe laddering or stair-stepping that so that 5 years from now we're not in the same position, so that there's sort of a continuation of that funding?
You kind of alluded to that, Frank.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, and this is to me one of our, I have a lot of lessons learned. This is one of them, right? Like, we deployed the capital twice as fast as we were planning to, and we probably shouldn't have done that. But there's also there's an urgency of now that we feel from a missional perspective is costs could keep going up. you need affordable housing now. So you got to find that right balance and sit in that tension. But it's something we're definitely going to be taking to heart going forward.
Frank said he was going to raise twice as much money. So it'll take him a little longer to
Say
get
we
it
need
out,
twice as much.
out the door. Okay, right here and then over here.
My question has to do
And you
with...
are?
I'm Bruce Gunter. Y'all are invited to meetings here on Sunday morning as well. My question has to do with the economic mobility. I referenced the good work that Atlanta Way 2.0 is doing and the perpetual goal of developing in areas of opportunity. And so my question is, how do we extend those dots, Amanda, on your chart into these areas of opportunity where jobs are? Frank, it may be that getting corporations more involved is part of it, but it is such a thorny issue and so important to addressing the economic immobility that we have in our, and segregation that we've had for decades.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, absolutely, Bruce. Raj Shetty is the one that produced all of that research around economic mobility in the United States and Atlanta, and his key policy recommendation was the creation of mixed income communities. That is the most effective way to address economic immobility. So we will continue to pursue affordable housing opportunities in higher wealth communities. We did that through the Darlington. There are a couple of other examples. So I think a lot of that will be through preservation for us, where we're looking at a preservation strategy that either converts existing market rate housing to affordable housing through a private enterprise agreement, which is essentially a property tax abatement, or to take existing naturally occurring affordable housing and put it into a private enterprise agreement to preserve that affordable housing longer term. So looking across the city, I think that will be more financially feasible on the north side of the city than new construction. So we are taking that into consideration, and we'll continue to pursue those opportunities in tandem with our work within the NRI neighborhoods.
I would just add to, because I think this is a really important point around where you invest, right? Because if you just invest, as we know, in areas that are the cheapest, they tend to also be areas that already have concentration of poverty, and you don't want to just replicate what was something that didn't work over the last 5 decades. And so, practically speaking, what I think that translates to for us is like being willing to take more risk, being willing to accept a higher cost per door, in all honesty, because that's what it ends up being, and a lot of more infill, and being comfortable with that. Like the Darlington's a great example. We also invested in the Darlington. Is a higher opportunity neighbor right across from Piedmont. It's a great project. We made a very significant investment. It was one of our largest investments from it, because it's an iconic property right in a higher opportunity neighborhood, 600 units, really mixed in terms of some supportive housing, affordable housing, some market rate housing. Trying to figure out, I know the developer's trying to figure out a partnership with Piedmont right across the street. To me, that's a great example of a kind of project we want to, that you're taking a community development lens, not just an affordable housing lens. Another example we just approved in investment committee.
Quickly.
Is 2 Peachtree, where the city's also investing right in downtown, an area that is moving, and we're seeing a lot of investment, and I think is going to become a higher opportunity area over time, given all the investment there. And that's a much higher cost per door as well, but we accept it because of that very point.
Thank you, Frank. I'm going to try to get a couple more questions in.
Yeah, Eric Speakman, Dude. I went past 970 yesterday and had this sense of, oh my God, I forgot the Dunkin' Donuts from 30 years ago. But then I had this overwhelming
Krispy
feeling
Kreme.
I think things are better, right? Thurston said, better than they were 30 years ago. And I think it's got a lot to do, certainly with Bill and the 3 of you up here. I know you all mentioned public land, and I know Amanda's very humble, but her and her board came up with this great model of public land bank.
You got a question.
So how are you going to use the public land? I know Catherine's using, for homeless, more use of public land, which we have a ton of it in Thomasville Heights.
Yes, so we're absolutely, through the Housing Strike Force, working to redevelop all of the land that's in public ownership in conjunction with our partners that own that land. there are a couple of advantages to that. We can control what happens on that land. So we can establish a vision. We can even go through full community engagement, rezoning process in order to have a clear development program and then just bring in a partner that can help us execute. So it's good because we can control what happens. And in most situations, we can contribute that land to the deal as equity. And so you don't
You hear
have
that,
to
John?
have the land, John knows. You don't have to have the land cost in the deal, which helps to support the affordability, but in and of itself is not enough alone. You still need additional gap funding.
So here's a question, just again to have the right expectations. So somebody on your team identifies some land that we could use. What does it take to get there? I mean, you got to have meetings, get input, maybe zoning. Is it a year or two?
It's a long process, and it can vary depending on who the public partner is and what process they are either required to have or they choose to have. That's why we're doing this developer day, to create a little more transparency around what those opportunities are and what that process looks like. For example, we have a partnership with Atlanta Public Schools. They've identified a number of surplus sites that they no longer need for educational purposes. So we brought in the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation, who is managing the redevelopment of those lands. And for that specific example, we will do community engagement, we'll determine what we want built on the site, we'll do rezoning, then we'll identify a development partner to execute on that vision through an RFQ.
This is why we're excited you're there.
Oh,
Right.
I mean, much of this predates me, so I can't take credit for it.
Right.
Thank you three for your continued leadership
And
in
you are?
space. Karen Hatcher with Sovereign. Wanted to ask a question around the rising costs and sustainability long term. One, with the SSD, are we going to study or understand the impact that will have on small businesses that own property within the city where small businesses are already experiencing challenges, right? They're closing doors in some situations, right, with taxes and so forth. So if you can let us know what your thoughts are and what your plans are in terms of measuring that. And my second question is, do we anticipate...
One question.
So that concern has been surfaced by city council members. I don't think that we have come up with a conclusion yet at this point how that will be addressed or if it will be addressed. But there is certainly sensitivity to that, and we have done the calculations to understand what the impact of the SSD will be on all of those property owners, so that we can understand the magnitude and try and mitigate it to ensure that it doesn't have any unintended negative consequences.
Okay, I'm running up against the clock right here.
I'm Ernie Eden with Eden Realty. 45 years ago, a few of us in this room and others created the Georgia Housing Coalition, and the result was the Housing Trust Fund for the Homeless, which has never been funded properly in all the years it's been in existence. I wonder to what extent anyone is working at the state level to get the state to pay attention to this issue.
Natalie's working on it.
Let me...
Yes, in our 3 years of state policy work, we have been actively seeking additional funds for the Housing Trust Fund for the Homeless, and we would welcome others to join us in that advocacy effort. We will be asking again in 2027.
Isn't it interesting that when Natalie does that, it's on her website, so pay attention. We're going to have one more, and I'm going to be past time right there.
David Gibbs, Social Capital Consulting. Frank, along the lines of the notion of community development as opposed to housing development solely, how many of the projects completed were in fact mixed income community developments? And might mixed income at the right calibration be a way to mitigate and reduce the risks to increase investment?
Sure. So I don't have that off the top of my head. I would say the vast majority are mixed income. But not exclusively, because we have a real deep partnership with Partners for Home, for example. We made a $10 million investment there. So we have some that are very targeted, but for the most part, the projects are mixed.
Okay. This segment is ending. Thank the panel. So we're kind of into panel 2, and I want to invite Dr. Alan Ferguson, who's really got me worried. He's sitting in the very back. Wasn't sure he was here. Alan, come on up. Dr. Alan Ferguson, recently appointed as DeKalb County's first Chief Housing Officer. Both of you guys could have a conversation about a different view. I mean, before that, we know him as the President and CEO of Atlanta Habitat for Humanity, and on and on. Alan, we want you to join the panel. I didn't give you a chance to do your whole PowerPoint, but join in. Tell us what's going on at DeKalb, and then we'll open it up for each other. You do have a PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Go.
I got a couple of slides.
Alan has all the money.
Not quite, not quite. But first, thank you, for allowing me this opportunity to sit with this distinguished group of folks. We've known each other and have done a lot, together over the past several years to impact the housing space, and so it's a privilege and an honor to be here today. So, in short, what's going on in DeKalb County? A lot. All right. So, as Bill mentioned, I'm the first Chief Housing Officer, for DeKalb County, inaugural position. Started that role last August of 2025, and I'm very, very fortunate in that we have tremendous leadership there in DeKalb County in terms of Madam CEO Lorraine Cochran Johnson and her vision for how she wants to grow and develop and empower DeKalb to really kind of rise to the status that we think it should be. And through her leadership and the cooperation with our Board of Commissioners, we've hit the ground running, and we just haven't stopped. So I joined in August. In October of last year, we launched and we kicked off our comprehensive housing plan, which is creating a countywide, really comprehensive, holistic strategy for how we're going to open up housing opportunities in DeKalb County. That work is still and currently underway. We're just over the halfway mark, and we're looking to land that study and establish that plan and have it adopted by our Board of Commissioners later this year, October, November timeframe. In November of last year, for the first time ever, DeKalb County, our Board of Commissioners, voted a 7-0 vote, so they voted unanimously to, for the first time, establish dedicated funds out of the general revenue budget for DeKalb County towards affordable housing. So they established the Affordable Housing Fund and funded that in this year's budget, 2026, with $12 million in capital, growing to $15 million in capital in 2027, and $15 million at a minimum, thereafter. I'm going to keep, knocking them for more. But really kind of the most important and most significant thing that we're advancing is our housing investment bond. So you've heard, the panelists talk about how impactful the Housing Opportunity Bond has been for the city of Atlanta. Well, in DeKalb, we're launching a similar initiative we're calling our Housing Investment Bond. And it'll be the first time that the county is launching that type of endeavor to really create and dedicate a significant amount of resources in the near term for advancing, the housing ecosystem in DeKalb County. And so you'll see there on the screen, we're looking to launch a number of different programs out of that initiative. Our target capital raise is somewhere between $150 and $160 million. And we are really at the cusp of not just providing resources, but really developing and enhancing and creating a really strong ecosystem, not just for affordable housing, but for housing development in general in DeKalb County. So I want everybody in here to send me good thoughts and to wish me luck. I go before the Board of Commissioners on June 23rd to ask for their approval to enter our intergovernmental agreement. And provided we get all of our votes from our commissioners, we'll be opening up and launching these programs at the end of third quarter this year. So a lot of exciting things happening in DeKalb County.
Hey, John, right, he's got the money.
Yes. Yes. And so, with that having been said, what we anticipate the impact to be for those funds, really to generate, well over $1 billion in investment. Because as everyone, knows in here and you've heard, on this panel, it's about resources and it's about how you leverage those resources. And so we think we'll do well over $1 billion in investment. And we anticipate doing 15,000 units over an 8-year span, just from this initial investment. So really pleased and really, feel that's an ambitious goal for DeKalb County, considering we have no prior history doing this type of exercise. So we're really excited about that. And we've already had a number of informational work sessions, and so I want to, drop this, to everyone as well. Our implementation partner for a number of these programs is Decide DeKalb County's Development Authority. And we've held 4 information sessions, really to garner that stakeholder feedback as we kind of craft the guidelines for these programs in advance of implementation. So if anyone wants additional details around these particular 4 programs, you can go on Decide DeKalb's YouTube channel and view those information sessions. We'll still continue to have some engagement and stakeholder engagement as we bring these programs forth, but that's a great resource, for you to catch up. And with that, I'll sum it up.
So, Alan, have you got your own YouTube channel yet?
I do not have my own
Okay.
YouTube channel yet, but maybe we should put that in the 2027 plan.
So I want to ask you, I think you were in the room, ask Amanda, who's worked in a lot of different roles. You've done the same thing. Plus you went to school for 40 years. You got your PhD. How has your view changed? You're now working for a county. It has to get things passed by commissioners.
So I wouldn't say my view has changed as much as it's been validated and reinforced in regards to just how important partnership and collaboration and leadership is in this particular space. This whole group project didn't just happen overnight. Folks were in the trenches, for years, for decades, doing this work. And so there was already kind of a built-in kind of nucleus of trust and camaraderie involved. But it took leadership, and it took leadership from the top, from the previous mayor, and especially from the current mayor, for the city of Atlanta, Mayor Dickens, in order to kind of galvanize that group into what you see today. So, the housing strike force, the fact that that the city now has, a collaborative, group that comes together amongst a group of funders, the Funders Collective, to talk about transactions in a really complete and comprehensive way and figure out not how to stop things from moving, but how to make deals happen. That is tremendously valuable. And so what I've picked up from those types of exercises is exactly what I'm trying to build in DeKalb. And granted, I would dare say my situation is a bit more complex than the city of Atlanta, because we've got unincorporated DeKalb and we have 13 operating municipalities, including a portion of the city of Atlanta operating. So bringing all of those different groups who have their own ideas, their own visions, their own thoughts around what they want their communities to look like is a yeoman's task. But we've taken that on and we picked up that mantle, and we really leaned hard into community and stakeholder engagement because I think, as everybody has learned over the years, and especially when it comes to dealing with homelessness and the underhoused, there are no jurisdictional borders. around these, types of issues. So it's no longer an affordable housing crisis. It is a housing crisis, and so it needs collaborative work and comprehensive solutions to really advance in trying to take on this challenge.
Thank you, Alan. I got a couple of questions, people online. Marcy Reed, here's a way for the city or county. Reinvestment funds can be tied to green building certification. Is that an aspiration as any of you, Bill, or Community Foundation invest green building?
I don't think a lot of people know because it's not really widely broadcast, but just about every program that's offered has at least some standards in regards to sustainability. When you're going, to seek those funds. And so it's kind of over the years, it was dealt with, in a one-off fashion, but pretty much now it's kind of baked into everyone's programs, across the board. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that every project goes for LEED certification, but what it does mean is that, it's taking into context responsible energy use, responsible water use, any type of conservation activities. And, it's been primarily focused over on the multifamily space for apartments, but we're seeing it more and more in the single family space because, to the extent that you can, maintain or reduce, someone's energy and utility costs, you're able to maintain the long-term affordability in that home. So.
Okay, so we're going to try to move more quickly.
I'll just add to Alan's point, we have not seen sustainability standards that work as well for single-family home ownership. So we are piloting a program right now at the city to introduce some sustainability standards and figure out what the right standard is for a single-family home, and then hopefully scale it to operate citywide.
Okay, so it's either being done or in our aspirations, very much on our mind. Frank, somebody online, Jerry McGauley, he should have just sent you a personal email, but I'm going to ask the question. I would like to ask Frank, has he thought about working with the real estate private equity firms, i.e. the House bill that would no longer, these investment firms can buy a large amount of properties. So there may be an opportunity to partner with them. Thought about that?
Yeah, no, we definitely work with REITs and others who are looking at our space. I think the challenge has historically been just the return expectation and the reality that they're looking for double-digit returns in terms of what they're doing, which is, again, from a missional perspective, not necessarily additive in terms of what we're trying to do. So that's been the initial barrier, but that's, I think, part of what we're trying to do is how do we create a product on a risk-adjusted basis that attracts different kind of capital that's not currently invested in the collective affordable housing space.
Are there still missing tools? I mean, we're talking about, we had a lot of success. We're going to double down, do it again. But is there any capital tools that are missing here in Atlanta and the region? Amanda?
From my perspective, the biggest tool that we're missing is simply a dedicated funding source for affordable housing.
Like they've done in Florida and other
Right.
places.
At the city, we have the Housing Trust Fund, which is funded through the general fund annually, but there are parameters in which it gets funded, and there are situations in which it could not get funded. So what I think would be helpful to all of us in the region is to have a predictable, sustainable source of funds that is used exclusively for affordable housing.
You working on that, Natalie?
And more state funding would be a great source of that, so I know Natalie's working on it.
John?
Bill, yeah, could I add one? So we're tapping into some existing sources we need, but we tap into low-income housing tax credit. And home ownership, there is no existing source on the developer side aside from local. And oddly in politics, there's a program called the New Markets Tax Credit Program. Habitat International developed it. ANDP helped take it nationally to others. We are the #1 user. It's nerdy and esoteric. It's really hard to get allocations. The Trump administration came in, and so new markets tax credits are now permanent. It is a permanent source. And the Trump administration came in and said, we'd like more of that used for affordable housing. Well, it really doesn't work for rental. So we saw a doubling this year of money to not-for-profits using that. And some people are predicting that that doubling could be tenfold. And so Atlanta paying attention, we're already sort of the leader in, how do we get the not-for-profit ecosystem to tap into that emerging source, I think is something we'll put in our plan.
How hard is it to get that kind of money?
So we love advising. It is technical. It has weird things when you're accrual accounting, but like all things, you find a partner. There's a law firm in St. Louis that worked with Habitat, and we work with a CDFI who's a special funder. And for us as the developer, the compliance we have to do is no harder than for the city. Community foundation's a little bit easier. The compliance is not that hard. And it's 22%. So if you're in Chicago, you can't do home ownership with 22%. But if you have down payment assistance in DeKalb and Atlanta, and you have the 22% for the developer side, it works. So we'll be trying to work with others. We don't want to be the only one using it for development. Habitat has used it on sort of an infrastructure execution here, but that's a little bit of good news.
Okay. Any nerdy people out here that want to ask John a question? That was good. Yes.
Hey, I'm Ivan Alfaro with Comwalk, for-profit affordable housing developer. I just wanted to ask you just your day-to-day for raising capital. Are you hanging out at a Buckhead golf course and being like, hey, you, what does it look like? Speeches every day?
Yeah. So it's not just me. It's like all of our senior staff is out raising capital, and some is the low-cost 2-3% money, and some is the charitable. But I believe, to Frank's statement, if you do the work and it's successful, then it is easier to raise the money next time. So we've been growing slowly for a really long time. So I feel good about our opportunity to raise it. If you have an existing relationship, it's hard to get the new donor, but if they come in and they invest $500,000 at 3%, it's easy as you grow to get them to go to $1 million or $2 million or $3 million, still at the 3%, because the balance sheet has grown. But we are very intentional that raising capital, and we deploy it right through a bunch of other folks. We aren't really our own construction firm. So yes, that is our focus.
Yeah, that's really a good question. Maybe Amanda and Alan, you're in a different position. A lot of lunches with city council people, or how do you kind of build allies and educate people about what you need?
Well, you can imagine, for me being new in this role, it's been a lot of, building and developing and curating those allies. I think really, the most important thing is really kind of demystifying, what affordable housing is, or really more so what housing affordability is.
And who do you talk to?
When I engage with my board of commissioners, but also community, stakeholders, everybody has their thoughts, their notions, their ideas around what affordable housing looks like. And the type of people who are in or, utilize or serviced, by affordable housing. So once you start having those conversations and you start, bringing out, just the facts and the data to a lot of people, it's really eye-opening. The fact that, a lot of people, it kind of flies over their head, but when you're talking about, households that are 80% of area median income, and saying that, that's, kind of a target starting point for affordable home ownership, we're trying to attain, they start saying, well, I don't know if those people, should, get a home. And you get those types of comments, kind of in closed door conversations. And then you start saying, you realize you're talking about a household that's making over $90,000 a year. And what we're saying is that with price points that are above $400,000 a year, for a single family home ownership, they need some help, they need some assistance. And then, the light bulb all of a sudden turns on and says, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. And then they start to humanize it and say, my daughter, my son, my nephew, whatever, they just graduated from college. They're making, $70,000 as an engineer working for, a great company here in Atlanta. And they're paying, $2,200 a month for their one-bedroom apartment. Once they start to, understand the human context of it, it makes those conversations a whole lot easier.
What I would just add is, since I've started at the city, I've developed a Affordable Housing 101 presentation that's really Affordable Housing Finance 101, because I don't think people understand why the need exists for all of the subsidy in these projects. So we start with why costs have increased so significantly, what the drivers are of that, how much it costs to build a housing project, regardless of whether it is market rate or affordable, it is the same, and then how that project supports the revenue.
Yeah.
And the fact that, if you have a market rate housing, all of the revenue generated from the market rate housing can be used to pay off the debt. But if you have an affordable housing project, your revenue is half of that. And so you can't support as much debt.
Right.
So just talking them through the whole process to understand why these gaps exist and what the role of the public sector is to fill those gaps. And these are conversations that we have with City Council as well as leadership at the city. I think the most impactful thing that we can do, though, is to show them example projects and specifically what the sources of funding are for projects and where gaps exist, because that just makes it more tangible. So that's been really helpful for us to do that.
Thank you. Frank, I'm sure you have to do the same thing as you look for investors.
Yep. We talk to institutional investors, individual investors. We have 1,100 donors that we work with, so we talk to all of them, talk to all the foundations, the banks. So it's, to me, it's basics fundraising 101 in terms of really understanding where the points of alignment are, what's the entry point, right, in terms of what are their careabouts, and how you link it to the work you're trying to do. And if sometimes there's a good resonance, sometimes not, and that's okay. But it's a cliche, but it's relationships.
I don't know if you remember at the last housing forum, I challenged all of you to go out and talk to somebody who has a different point of view. You remember that? That's what we're talking about here. And I wonder, in your work, in your life, do you have regular opportunities to tell that story? Give me a show of hands that feel like in your work, your life, when somebody doesn't understand why somebody deserves housing or how the deal's done. How many people do that? Okay. Would it be helpful, I'll put you on the spot, Amanda, but it would be helpful to have a cheat sheet about how the deal comes down. I don't know if you provide that, Natalie, but I think as much as we know that, right, where we can actually get into that conversation and really make the point, to bring people around to now understand it. Is that possible?
I have a presentation. I do not have a cheat sheet.
Well, whatever you can share, we'll get George to put it up there. See if there's any questions in the group. We got the experts here. Stand up and tell me who you are.
I'm Christian DeCenzo. I'm with Mountain Bike Atlanta, just a fan of housing and walkability and stuff. So that's kind of my question a little bit. Do folks you're talking with when you're fundraising understand why affordable housing is important? Besides maybe they think of it as charity for charity's sake or something like that. folks understand that affordable housing actually is long-term better for our community and our city and makes it more resilient?
I think the way I would answer that is we've been talking about tremendous progress over the last few years, and we want to do more of that. So somebody heard us. Somebody invested at 3%. Some foundation said, we're going to get into it for the first time. But ultimately, the answer is no. And that's what we're talking about here, right? We've all got to go out and share these stories. Good question. Right back here.
My name is David Sanders. I'm the CEO at Metro South Association of Realtors, sort of on the Southern Crescent. Specifically for Dr. Ferguson, I see that Sycamore is helping with your plan, your housing plan. They also helped with Clayton County's comprehensive plan. So my question is there any sort of collaboration with all of the counties right now that are looking at comprehensive plans on sort of, I don't want to say work together because you are your own things, but there seems to be a very common trend of people starting this process right now, specifically.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, quite frankly, I think that table is beginning to be set by the Atlanta Regional Commission. And that's where I think kind of the next iteration, next generation of conversations, needs, quite frankly, needs to happen. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that they're taking the lead on a regional housing conversation because they're already leading when it comes to the regional conversation regarding transit and growth. So it's just natural for that conversation to take place at that table. And I applaud Anna Roach, who's part of the best class ever, along with a couple of others here on this panel. But for stepping up and taking the lead, to really drive that conversation. But there is strong opportunity, I think, for regional cooperation and regional collaboration, and also a combined regional effort around resources, to devote towards housing.
And a point that's been made, and I'll say again, is we learn from each other. So if DeKalb's taking the lead, with bond finance and so forth, other counties can say, how did you do that? Or you can come to the city and ask Amanda. So the key is to learn from each other.
Bill, I wanted to get back to the comment, is it better? And you said somewhat. The housing forum has been around for a while. That's how I found out about it. I was running for local politics. I didn't know the issue. Addie Dorsey, our founder, others started talking about this a long time ago. It is vastly different. The reason we were able to do our first capital campaign since I came here, because I had to learn the fundraising, was because it changed. We've had 2 mayors run on it. We had a county CEO run on it. We have the community foundation. So we have more work to do, but at times I like to celebrate. And this housing forum, frankly, has been key. It takes a while to grow a tree, and we need more shade, but we've got some shade now. We can raise capital.
Good. Anybody else? Right back here. You're going to get your second question in. I'm kidding.
Yes, my name is Emil Forbes. I'm with Supporter Report / Atlanta Way 2. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Emil Forbes. I'm with Atlanta Way 2.0 / Supporter Report. I just had a question for the panel. Are there any plans to invest in transit oriented development? Just in concerns like building more housing or maybe more mixed use development around MARTA stations and I guess also along the new BRT line.
Yeah, I can answer that. I have had this job before at MARTA, but I'm really happy to share that in my current capacity at the city, we are working very closely with MARTA to advance transit-oriented development on 2 stations specifically. the HE Home Station and the Oakland City Station, they have had a staff transition at MARTA, and so they do not have anybody in that AGM of real estate role who was leading all of the TOD work. So we're stepping in to take over some of that responsibility in partnership with MARTA, and are hoping to move forward those two projects. But agree that transit access is incredibly important when coupled with housing, because that gives you access to jobs.
Let me also say...
I'm sorry. I'll just piggyback on that. We're also doing the same thing in DeKalb County. And if you like a great example of impactful transit-oriented development, there's a project called Phoenix Station, just opened across the street from the Kensington MARTA station. Is performing fantastically well. And the interesting thing is that any given point of the day, that parking lot is only 60% full. That parking deck is only 6% full because people are using the transit, which is what we wanted.
Yeah. And I'll just mention that our September forum is going to feature ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission, and what they're doing in housing. You can certainly ask them about transportation. That would be. Anybody else?
Yeah, good morning. Kudos to all of you all. Great work you've done. My question is around...
Joe, who are you?
Oh, sorry. Joel Dixon, urban oasis developer. I build mixed income communities and also focus on producing thriving neighborhoods. So my question is around capital and its impact on zoning and land use, whether you all are currently using your capital to impact that in a positive way, whether you even see a connection to how capital can be more efficiently used with zoning reform.
So I can just say some of our, kind of in the presentation earlier, we do have a focus on policy and programs, and so some of our dollars have gone to support some of that, and there's a lot of interest among funders right now around especially permitting and what can be done here and other places really across the country around it. So that's how we try to play in that space.
Yes, from a policy perspective at the city, we certainly recognize that zoning has a significant impact on housing production citywide, and it is having a zoning code that allows for an increasing unit production is the single most impactful thing you can do to help address this issue without investment, right? So we are, within the housing team, working with the Department of City Planning in Atlanta to try and refine zoning 2.0 to address that issue. And that's still in process, so we don't know where it's going to come out. But we understand the opportunity. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to refine our zoning code in Atlanta to allow for an increase in production. And we're working hard to try and make that happen.
Thank you.
I was going to say likewise for DeKalb County, we're in the middle of a zoning rewrite, and that's in progress. And also, we just recently, well, actually last year, have a new director of planning and sustainability, and Juliana Njoku, and she's leading a complete revamp of that department, which we're anticipating leading to a better and more efficient permitting process. And we're also partnering, I should mention, with along with the city of Atlanta in an effort called Cut the Tape, sponsored by JP Morgan Chase, involving House ATL, where we're also looking at ways to improve and enhance and make the process more transparent so we can produce more housing. So.
Alan's going to come back later in the year where we're going to focus on DeKalb. He'll have his full slideshow. But there's a lot going on there, and we'll focus on it. Yes.
Yes.
Tim.
I'm Tillman Ward, Community Resources of Atlanta, based in historic Vine City. You couldn't ask for a better panel on affordable and attainable housing. Who follows up on what's promised and what's delivered? We all use the word affordable housing. When rubber meets the road, see, yeah, it's affordable, it's just not affordable to you. Who follows up with the organizations that you're able to communicate, relate, collaborate with?
Well, I'll say as part of the NRI work, the Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative, I mentioned the legislative package that was introduced to council about 2 weeks ago. An important component of that legislation is accountability. So there are a number of new measures that are going to be implemented in order to better track not just unit production, but impact. So if this gets passed, you will see us being able to be held accountable for our stated objectives in a much clearer way than we have been able to in the past.
Always a good question. Things get counted, get done. If we count, we ought to know the numbers. So I think we've got some folks that are going to do that. I think we have one right over here.
Oh, one more. Karen Hatcher with Sovereign. As we are working on developing these buckets that are created for ongoing operations of these assets, especially in particular single-family assets that are owned by nonprofit that are used for affordable housing. As we continue to develop these areas, property values rise. However, nonprofit-owned assets or residential property, they're not single-family, they're not able to take advantage of any type of tax relief. So, is there any type of bucket or policy that can be created to help fill that gap? Because over time, it just becomes, economically difficult.
Yeah, so, kind of the ultimate solution, the aspirational solution is to really put forth some type of policy framework, some type of legislation that protects those affordable homeowners from rapid increases in property values and the burden that brings with increasing property taxes. But in the meantime, you have to use different levers. Right now we're going through, actually, I think responses are going to be due in the next week or so for DeKalb County establishing a countywide community land trust. We're doing a feasibility study to figure out what that looks like, how that would work, and what types of resources we would need to put behind it in order to create that. So a community land trust kind of provides some cushion, a middle ground for that. But the ultimate solution is to have some type of policy legislation in place that allows counties, local municipalities to cap the property taxes for those affordable homeowners. And you have to go through some type of rigor and things like that to have some type of means testing involved. But ultimately, a policy solution is the best.
Gentrification's real, right? Yes.
Thomas Billups Homes, and also with the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association, I'm on their board. One of the things that we're fighting, we've got six active moratoriums right now, and also with the development ordinances being rewritten, including things like minimum square footages and brick and architectural standards that are making it more challenging to build affordable housing. So my question is, are you guys involved in the policy side with trying to fight some of those changes that are making it more difficult to develop affordable housing?
And one thing I'd point you to is actually the last housing forum. The whole thing was to talk about that. You could find that on YouTube. But to his question.
Yes, we're actively involved, in those types of conversations. Understanding once you start getting into the details of all those things, it's really a community dynamic that goes along with it. Everyone would agree that they want to make home ownership more attainable. Not everybody agrees with what a home should look like or how it should be constructed. So we're trying to be very thoughtful and purposeful in our zoning rewrite in terms of minimum square footages, allowable materials, allowable types of construction, to allow for more housing production at more attainable prices. But it's a dance, with community in terms of what gets accepted and what gets adopted. So that's kind of where we are in that process. But we're definitely engaged in those discussions and trying to advance some good, strong, transparent, and clearly defined policies forward.
Anybody else? Okay. Please thank this panel for being here today. we all know where you are, so please use these great resourceful people. Thank you. Y'all can stay up here, or I'm going to do a little summary. You know, the story of the last several years is one of unprecedented investment and measurable impact. Thousands of affordable housing got built, and we celebrate that. The story of the next several years may be different. It will be about sustaining momentum, recapitalizing successful efforts, strengthening partnerships, and ensuring that housing production remains a regional priority. That's exactly what we've talked about today. As Alan put it earlier, it takes stronger collaboration, really true partnerships, and leadership, both at the public and private sector. It takes a village. It takes all of us. So again, I want to challenge us to all be storytellers and to go out and tell the story, have the data, but convince people about the common good. At the Chamber of Commerce, we call it workforce housing. You know, we might call it specialized housing over here. But in any case, it's part of building a city. We learn from each other, and that's what this is about at the Housing Forum. We have to embrace innovation and the tools, such as AI, but the tools of actually going to Natalie's website and using the tools that group has put together. I want to thank St. Luke's Episcopal Church, who continues to open its doors. I think I heard ANDP's doing something again here this weekend. I want to do the Forum Steering Committee. George, if you could get that up there. That's not what we're seeing. Okay. The Arthur M. Blank Foundation, which has given some grants, and certainly the financial support across the board. I remind folks that this conversation's been going on for a long time, about 40 years. Not many conversations last that long. Not many conversations grow instead of decrease over the years. This has grown. We have twice as many people online today. All this comes about because we work together. So one person that never wants to come out, but I want to thank George Bergen, who's the producer of this show. George. So we all know if George leaves, I leave, because I wouldn't know what to say. But this is an important time. I think, John, you made the point, very different conversation than we had 10, 20, 30 years ago. So we have something to show. We can replicate it. We can work with each other. We can show collaboration across. And we know at the end of the day, it helps with transportation choices. It helps with better public health. It helps with better educational outcomes. So we're all working together for that. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you in September.